Memorial Day weekend was supposed to be a simple family gathering. My parents had come to Havenport to spend a few days with me, and my sister had brought her husband and children along. I wanted to do something special, so I decided to take everyone to Ocean Pearl Seafood House, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I had a premium membership account there that I had signed up for months earlier. It worked like a prepaid balance system, and because I had invested in the higher tier, I received discounts and bonus credit. I rarely used it, so I figured this was the perfect chance to finally spend the remaining balance on the people I loved. When my sister saw the menu, she immediately leaned closer and whispered, "Are you sure about this place? I just saw a vegetable dish that costs almost $50. I smiled and squeezed her hand. "Relax. I have a membership here. There's money already loaded onto it. This meal is on me." The moment she heard that, the tension left her face. Still, my family was careful. They ordered modestly, even though there were 7 of us. They chose only a handful of dishes because they didn't want me wasting my money on them. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to protect me. So while everyone was distracted talking, I quietly walked to the front desk and checked the remaining balance. There was almost $1,000 left. I smiled when I saw the number. I knew my family would never order enough, so I returned to the table and secretly added more dishes. I chose things I knew my parents would never buy for themselves. Fresh seafood, specialty dishes, desserts. I wanted them to enjoy the experience without worrying about the price. When the servers started bringing out the extra plates, my mother immediately noticed. "Why did you order more? We already have enough food." I laughed. "Mom, today is my treat. Just enjoy it." She gave me that familiar look that was half disappointment and half love. My sister shook her head and whispered, "You really need to stop spending money like this." I smiled. What's the point of working hard if I can't use what I earn to make my family happy? The rest of the meal was exactly what I hoped it would be. Everyone laughed, my niece told stories from school, my father talked about old memories, and my mother kept telling everyone they were eating too much while secretly enjoying every bite. After dinner, my family stayed upstairs in our private room chatting. I went downstairs to settle the bill. I had just finished paying when I turned around and saw someone familiar standing near the cashier. It was my coworker, Rachel Bennett. The moment she noticed me, her expression changed. For a split second, I saw something uncomfortable in her eyes, almost like she had been caught doing something she knew she shouldn't. But it disappeared quickly, replaced by her usual cheerful smile. "Oh, hey. I didn't know you were here too," she said. I smiled politely. "My parents and my sister's family are visiting. I wanted to take them somewhere nice." Rachel nodded quickly. "That's great. Go back upstairs. I just need to pay for my dinner." I could have left, but something made me stay nearby. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe it was the strange look I had seen on her face. I stood a few steps away while she approached the cashier. Then I heard her say something that made my entire body freeze. "My phone number is 555-0187. Can you pull up my account?" My heart skipped. That was my phone number. For a second, I wondered if I had misunderstood. Maybe someone else had the same number? But no. I knew exactly what I heard. I stepped closer. Rachel noticed me from the corner of her eye, and the guilty expression returned. "Oh, you're still here," she said awkwardly. "I thought you went back upstairs." I looked at her. "Rachel, did you just give them my phone number?" There was a brief silence. Then she smiled and gave me a playful little wink. "Come on. You have a membership here, right? Just let me use it for a second." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. She said it so casually, as if she was asking to borrow a pen. But she wasn't asking for a pen. She was asking to use my private account with my money inside. You mean you want to use my membership balance? I asked. She rolled her eyes slightly. Don't make it sound so serious. We're coworkers. It's just dinner. I'll treat you to coffee sometime. Coffee? That was her idea of repayment? My membership wasn't just some free coupon. It was a prepaid account where I had deposited thousands of dollars. I remembered mentioning it once at work months earlier. Someone had brought up Ocean Pearl Seafood House during lunch, saying it was expensive but amazing. I had casually said that I had a premium membership there. I never thought anyone paid attention. Apparently, Rachel did. She looked at my shocked expression and laughed. Seriously, don't be so stingy. You can afford it. You're the one who has the fancy membership. Before I could answer, the cashier looked at the screen and cleared her throat. I'm sorry, ma'am. There seems to be a problem. This account only has $1 remaining. Rachel's smile disappeared. What? The cashier repeated herself. There is only $1 left. The remaining balance on your bill is $1,299. Would you like to pay with card or cash? Rachel stood completely still. Her face went pale. She looked at the cashier, then slowly turned toward me. For the first time that night, she realized what had happened. I had brought my family here. I had used the money on my own account. The balance was gone because I had chosen to spend it on the people who mattered to me. But instead of accepting that, Rachel's expression changed from embarrassment to anger. Amanda, you used all of it, she snapped. I blinked. Excuse me? Her voice grew louder. You knew I was going to use this membership. You came here and spent everything on purpose, didn't you? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rachel, I brought my family here before I even knew you were coming. That money belonged to me. But she didn't listen. She stepped closer and pointed at me. There are so many restaurants in Havenport. You had to come here today? You had to spend every dollar? Now what am I supposed to do? I looked at her in disbelief. Pay for your own dinner? That answer seemed to offend her even more. You're seriously going to act like this? It's only $1,300. You can afford it. That was the moment I realized something. Rachel didn't see my generosity as kindness. She saw it as an opportunity. She thought because I was willing to spend money on my family, I would be willing to spend money on anyone who demanded it. And she was about to learn that she was wrong. Rachel stood in front of me with a confidence that honestly shocked me. She acted as if I had somehow ruined her evening, as if my decision to spend my own money on my own family had been some personal attack against her. You don't understand, she said, lowering her voice like she was explaining something obvious to a child. If your membership hadn't had money on it, I never would have come here and ordered this much. You created this situation. For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I had heard her correctly. She was blaming me because she had decided to spend money from an account that didn't belong to her. Rachel, you used my phone number without asking me. You tried to access my account without permission. And now you're telling me I'm responsible for your bill. She crossed her arms. We worked together. Is it really that hard to help someone out? You act like I'm asking you for a house. It's just dinner. I almost laughed because of how absurd it sounded. A $1,300 dinner was just dinner when someone else was expected to pay. No, I said calmly. It's not my dinner. It's yours. She looked at me like I had personally insulted her. Wow, Amanda. I didn't know you were that kind of person. That sentence almost made me laugh. She was calling me selfish because I refused to let her spend my money. I shook my head and walked away. I had no interest in arguing with someone who had completely lost touch with reality. Behind me, I heard Rachel call my name. Amanda, seriously? You're leaving me here? I didn't turn around. The cashier stopped her before she could follow me. Ma'am, you still need to complete payment. Rachel immediately changed her attitude. I said I'll handle it. Don't worry. Then she turned toward me again with an angry expression. I ignored her and returned upstairs to my family. But I didn't realize she would follow me. A few minutes later, the door to our private dining room opened, and Rachel walked inside with a completely different personality. The angry woman from downstairs disappeared instantly. A bright smile appeared on her face. Hi everyone. You must be Amanda's family. I'm Rachel, one of her coworkers. My mother, being the kind and welcoming person she always was, immediately stood up. Oh, a coworker? Come sit with us for a while. I could already feel something was wrong. Rachel looked around the table, taking in the expensive dishes. Her eyes stopped on the seafood platter, the lobster, and the specialty dishes I had ordered for my parents. Then she smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. Wow, she said. You really went all out. My mother smiled politely. Amanda wanted us to try some new things. Rachel nodded slowly. I can imagine. For people who don't usually come to places like this, it must feel very special. The room became quiet. I immediately noticed the change in my mother's expression. She was still polite, but she understood exactly what Rachel was implying. Rachel continued, pretending she was being helpful. I mean, this kind of restaurant isn't really something everyone gets to experience. Especially people from smaller towns. My hands tightened under the table. My parents had spent their entire lives working hard. They had never been people who cared about luxury or showing off. Everything they had given me came from sacrifice and love. Yet Rachel was sitting there acting like they were somehow less than her because they weren't from a wealthy city background. This lobster alone is hundreds of dollars, Rachel said, pointing at the plate. I'm guessing this is probably your first time trying something like this. My mother didn't answer. She simply placed her chopsticks down. My father's expression became serious. He was a quiet man, but I knew when he was hurt. Rachel laughed softly. Oh, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just saying it must be exciting to finally experience these things. That was enough. I pushed my chair back slightly. Rachel. She looked at me innocently. What? Stop. She smiled. I'm just talking. No. You're insulting my family while pretending you're being polite. The smile faded from her face for a second. Then she shrugged. You're being too sensitive. My voice became colder. You walked into this room after trying to use my account without permission. Then when that failed, you came here and decided to disrespect my parents? Rachel rolled her eyes. I was just making conversation. No. You were making yourself feel superior. Everyone at the table was silent. My niece looked confused and whispered to my sister, Mommy, did we do something wrong? My heart broke hearing that. I immediately turned toward her. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Not even a little. Rachel grabbed her purse and stood up. Whatever. I guess honesty isn't appreciated anymore. She walked toward the door, but before leaving she looked back at my parents. Just some advice. Havenport is different from a small town. People notice things. Ordering a huge amount of expensive food can make people talk. Then she left. For several seconds nobody said anything. My mother stared at the table. My father looked down. I knew exactly what hurt them most. Not the insult itself. They were strong enough to handle rude people. What hurt was that someone had looked at their kindness and simplicity and decided it meant they were inferior. We eventually left the restaurant. I thought the worst part of the night was over. I was wrong. As we reached the entrance, the restaurant manager suddenly hurried toward us. "Excuse me, ma'am. There is still an unpaid balance." I stopped. "What are you talking about?" "I already paid." He handed me a bill. I looked down and immediately recognized the name. Rachel's table. My anger returned instantly. "This isn't mine." The manager looked uncomfortable. "The woman who left said you would cover it." I stared at him. "She said that? And you believed her?" He hesitated. "You are co-workers. She gave us your phone number earlier, and you were seen together." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So anyone can walk into this restaurant, give you someone else's information, and leave them with the bill?" The manager tried to calm me down. "We can offer a small discount. 5%. Just settle the payment and avoid making this complicated." I almost couldn't believe his words. They had failed to verify anything, allowed someone else to attach a bill to my name, and now they were acting like I was the problem for refusing to accept it. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a message from Rachel. "Don't think you won. You used up the membership before I could. Consider tonight a lesson. Maybe next time you won't be so selfish." I stared at the screen. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't confused. She admitted exactly what she had done. She had planned this. She expected me to stay quiet because my family was there. She expected me to avoid conflict and simply pay. But she had made one mistake. She assumed kindness meant weakness. I looked at the manager and calmly picked up my phone. "I need to report fraud." His expression changed immediately. "Ma'am, maybe we can discuss this first." I shook my head. "No. We should have discussed it before you tried to force me to pay someone else's bill." Then I called the police. I explained that someone had used my information without permission, attempted to charge me for their personal expenses, and had left written evidence admitting they did it intentionally. For the first time that night, Rachel's confidence was gone. And I knew this was no longer just about a dinner bill. It was about finally showing her that some people can be generous without being easy to take advantage of. The moment I mentioned fraud to the dispatcher, the entire atmosphere around the restaurant changed. The manager, who moments earlier had been speaking to me like I was being unreasonable, suddenly became much more careful with his words. His confident attitude disappeared, replaced by nervous explanations and apologies. I stood near the entrance with my family behind me, holding my phone and calmly answering the dispatcher's questions. I gave them the restaurant's address, explained what happened, and told them that I had written proof from Rachel herself admitting that she had intentionally tried to use my account and leave me responsible for her bill. My family remained quiet. My father stood beside my mother with one hand resting gently on her shoulder. My sister held her children close, and my niece kept looking between the adults, trying to understand why the happy family dinner had suddenly become something serious. While we waited, I asked the manager to preserve the security footage from the cashier area. "I need the recording of Rachel giving my phone number and attempting to access my membership account," I said. "And I also need the footage showing her leaving without paying while telling your staff I would cover it." The manager opened his mouth, probably wanting to argue again, but stopped himself. He finally nodded and walked away. A few minutes later, I discovered something I hadn't expected. Rachel was still inside the restaurant. She had gone to the restroom after leaving the bill behind, probably thinking everything was already handled. But when she came back and realized the police had been called, she froze. She was standing near the lobby with her arms crossed, pretending she wasn't worried. When she saw me, she immediately walked over. "Are you serious right now?" she asked. "You actually called the police over a dinner bill?" I looked at her calmly. "I called because you committed fraud." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Fraud?" Amanda, don't be dramatic. We're coworkers. We know each other. I looked directly at her. Knowing someone doesn't give you permission to spend their money. Her expression changed slightly. I continued. You used my phone number to try to access my account without asking me. You told the restaurant I would pay your bill when I never agreed to that. Then you left the building without paying and sent me a message admitting you did it on purpose. Rachel's face tightened. I was going to pay you back. When? I asked. Tomorrow? Next week? Next year? She didn't answer. Your message didn't say you were sorry. It said you wanted to teach me a lesson. She looked away. Because she knew I was right. A little over 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. They weren't aggressive or dramatic. They simply came in, listened, and started sorting through the facts. One officer spoke with me while the other spoke with the restaurant manager. I had already prepared everything. I showed them the message Rachel sent me. I showed them my membership records proving the balance before dinner and after dinner. I explained that the only reason the account was nearly empty was because I had used it for my own family's meal before I ever knew Rachel was there. The officer read Rachel's message carefully. She sent this after leaving the restaurant, he asked. Yes, I replied. Almost immediately. He wrote something down. The wording here is important. Rachel, meanwhile, gave her own version of events. She claimed I had agreed to cover her meal. She said we were close friends at work and that she had only used my membership because she knew I wouldn't mind. She even told the officers that I was financially comfortable and that paying $1,300 was not a big deal for me. I couldn't believe she actually said that out loud. The officer looked at her. Do you have any messages or proof where she agreed to pay? Rachel looked down at her phone. Silence. Because there was nothing. The truth was simple. She had decided something in her own mind and treated that decision as if it were an agreement. After speaking with everyone, the officers explained that they would document the incident and file a formal report. They collected the evidence, including the message, the account records, and statements from the restaurant employees. They also informed the manager that the restaurant had failed to verify payment authorization properly. The manager looked exhausted. He had spent the entire evening trying to convince me to solve a problem that his own staff had helped create. When everything was finished, Rachel stood near the entrance looking completely different from the confident woman who had walked into my family's dinner earlier. The anger was gone. The arrogance was gone. What remained was uncertainty. She looked at me like she expected me to forgive her now that things had become serious. But I wasn't interested in pretending nothing happened. The restaurant will contact you about the bill, I said. And I'll be providing all documentation to my company's HR department. Her face immediately changed. HR? Amanda, seriously? Over dinner? I looked at her. No. Not over dinner. My voice stayed calm. Over the way you treated my family. Over the way you thought you could use my kindness as an opportunity. Over the fact that you believed I would stay quiet because causing a scene would be inconvenient. She tried to interrupt, but I continued. You walked into that room and humiliated my parents. You looked at 2 people who worked their entire lives and decided they were beneath you because they came from a smaller town. That was your choice. She didn't have an answer. The next morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. I didn't want revenge. I wanted documentation. There is a difference. I worked in financial compliance, which meant I understood the importance of facts, timelines, and evidence. Emotions disappear. Records remain. I created a detailed report for HR. I included everything from the restaurant incident, the messages, the payment records, the police report number, and the timeline of events. But while putting everything together, I realized something. This wasn't the first time Rachel had crossed a line. I had simply never connected all the small incidents before. Once I started writing them down, the pattern became obvious. There was the office supply situation where she had added personal items to a company order and acted like everyone should share the cost. There were lunches where she conveniently disappeared when the bill arrived. There were small loans from coworkers that were never repaid. A coffee here. A parking fee there. Amounts small enough that people eventually stopped asking because the conversation became more uncomfortable than the money itself. She had built a habit of taking small things from people who were too polite to confront her. I contacted a few coworkers who had experienced similar situations. They were hesitant at first, but once they saw the pattern, they agreed to provide statements. Linda remembered the money Rachel never returned after borrowing it months earlier. James talked about multiple lunches he had paid for because Rachel always promised she would get the next one. Paula from accounting admitted she avoided sitting near Rachel during team meals because she was tired of awkward conversations when the check came. The report grew longer. Not because I was trying to destroy Rachel, but because the truth was finally being organized. She had spent years relying on people's kindness. She assumed everyone would continue letting things go. She never expected anyone to put all the pieces together. But this time, someone did. And that someone was me. By Monday afternoon, the situation had become much bigger than Rachel expected. She probably thought everything would disappear after a few days. She probably imagined I would calm down, decide it wasn't worth the trouble, and quietly move on. That was the kind of person she had always counted on. Someone who would rather avoid conflict than demand accountability. But she misunderstood me completely. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I simply refused to pretend that what she did was acceptable. The HR director reviewed my report carefully. Because I worked in compliance, I knew how important it was to separate emotions from facts. I didn't write about how angry I was. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't insult her character. I simply documented what happened, step by step. The unauthorized attempt to use my membership account. The restaurant bill she tried to leave under my name. The message where she admitted she intentionally wanted to teach me a lesson. The comments she made to my parents. And the statements from coworkers who had experienced similar behavior. Once HR began investigating, more people came forward. Things Rachel had done for years suddenly became visible because everyone finally realized they weren't isolated incidents. Linda told HR about the $40 Rachel borrowed and never returned. She said she had eventually stopped bringing it up because every time she mentioned it, Rachel acted offended, as if asking for her own money back was somehow rude. James admitted he had paid for several lunches because Rachel always seemed to disappear when the check arrived. Paula explained that she had started avoiding group meals because she didn't want another awkward situation where Rachel suddenly forgot her wallet. None of these things were huge by themselves. That was exactly why Rachel had gotten away with them for so long. She didn't steal in dramatic ways. She took advantage of people through small moments, small excuses, and small pressures. She relied on everyone being too polite to call her out. But when all those small moments were placed together, they told a very different story. Rachel was called into HR that morning. I watched from my desk as she walked into the meeting room. She looked confident at first, but when she came out almost an hour later, that confidence was gone. She was placed on administrative leave while the investigation continued. She packed her things quietly that afternoon. The office watched, but nobody said anything. Everyone knew what had happened. Nobody celebrated. Nobody mocked her. There was just a strange silence, the kind that happens when people finally see someone clearly after years of ignoring the warning signs. A few days later, Ocean Pearl Seafood House contacted me. This time, it wasn't the floor manager who had tried to pressure me into paying Rachel's bill. It was someone from upper management. They sent a formal apology. They admitted their employees had failed to verify authorization before accepting another person's claim that I would pay. They apologized for putting me in that situation and explained that they were changing their procedures to prevent something similar from happening again. They also restored the money I had originally deposited into my membership account and offered a complimentary dinner for my family. I appreciated the apology, but what mattered most was that they acknowledged the mistake. Accountability mattered. Rachel also sent me another message later that week. It was much shorter than the previous one. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." I stared at the screen for a long time. The words told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry about what happened afterward. She regretted the consequences, not the actions. I never replied. Months passed, and eventually life moved forward. My parents returned to Havenport again, and this time I took them back to Ocean Pearl. At first, I hesitated. The restaurant held a bad memory, and I wondered if going back would bring everything back. But I realized something. Rachel didn't deserve to take that place away from us. That dinner belonged to my family, not to her. So we went. The restaurant was different when we returned. The staff treated us warmly, but not in an exaggerated way. They weren't trying to impress us or make up for the past. They simply treated us with respect, which was all anyone ever wanted. We sat near the window overlooking the harbor. My mother asked questions about the dishes, and the server answered her patiently. My father tried a seafood dish he had never eaten before. He took a bite, thought about it carefully, and then admitted he liked it but probably wouldn't order it again. We both laughed. Halfway through dinner, my mother put down her chopsticks and looked at me. "You didn't have to fight so hard for us," she said quietly. I knew exactly what she meant. She was talking about the police report, HR, the investigation, everything. I looked at her and smiled. "Yes, I did." She shook her head. "We're used to people saying things." That sentence stayed with me. Because I knew my parents were humble people. They never demanded respect. They never expected special treatment. They simply worked hard and treated others well. But being humble never meant they deserved to be humiliated. My mother smiled softly. "You're just like your grandmother." She never let unfair things stay quiet either. I laughed. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Maybe half of one. My father smiled from across the table. It was a small moment, but it reminded me why I had done everything. Not because of the money. Not because of the restaurant bill. Because some things are bigger than money. Respect is one of them. Later, I heard that Rachel's case with the restaurant was settled through a civil agreement. She paid what she owed, including additional fees. The police report remained on record, although it didn't lead to criminal charges. She eventually found another job at a smaller company. I only knew because someone mentioned seeing her profile online. I didn't follow her life. I didn't need to. By then, I had already moved on. Looking back, I think the biggest mistake Rachel made was misunderstanding kindness. She saw someone who helped others and assumed that person could be used. She saw generosity and thought it meant unlimited access. She believed that because I could afford something, I had no right to say no. But she learned the difference between being kind and being weak. They are not the same thing. I can give because I choose to give. I can help because I want to help. But nobody gets to take from me simply because I have the ability to provide. My parents spent their entire lives teaching me that a person's value is not measured by money, status, or where they come from. My mother grew up in a small town. She worked difficult jobs. She sacrificed so I could have opportunities she never had. My father worked long hours because he wanted me to have a better future. Rachel looked at them and saw people she thought were beneath her. But she was wrong. She saw their background and missed their character. She saw simplicity and mistook it for weakness. She saw kindness and assumed it meant permission. That was her greatest mistake. The view from the window at Ocean Pearl was beautiful that evening. The harbor reflected the sunset, and my mother quietly enjoyed her dessert while watching the boats pass. She looked peaceful. Happy. Like the terrible night months earlier had never happened. "Next time," she said, "bring your sister and the kids too." I smiled. "Of course." She looked at me seriously. "And don't spend too much." I laughed. "I knew you were going to say that." My father chuckled. My mother shook her head, but she was smiling. And sitting there with the people who had sacrificed so much for me, I realized something important. Some people mistake kindness for weakness because they only understand kindness as something they can use. They don't understand that the people who are the most generous are often the people who know their own worth the best. Rachel thought she had found someone easy to take advantage of. What she found instead was someone who knew exactly where the line was. And once she crossed it, I was no longer willing to let her pretend she hadn't.